They managed to distort history by using this rhetoric, including the history of Africa. They could pass off lies as the truth, leading to some young Africans not knowing Africa's history. My biggest regret is having spent a good part of my youth listening to radios like RFI, France 24. I've been living in countries where these radios were the only ones. We would use the programs, record their news to listen to, but after a while, there was a click. I began to understand that they brainwash us.
I remember our constructive and useful conversation back in 2023 when you visited our country for the first time to participate in the Russia-Africa Summit in St. Petersburg. During this visit, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about culture, about history, that laid the foundation of the resistance of the Russian people, of its struggle. I learned of sacrifices your people made, and due to these sacrifices, we are free.
When you look at the machines that won the war, from the T-34 tanks to modern vehicles, you notice the technological evolution of the Russian army, which inspires us to develop in the same direction. Relations are great, and I can say that during the past 2 years, they have started very well, and we are strengthening in such sectors as defense, security, but also education and trade. So, we have advanced cooperation in the different sectors so that we can share and exchange experience, as we have much to learn from Russia's education system, especially science. It must be mentioned that until today gold was Burkina Faso's first export product, but we have developed agriculture, first for self-sufficiency but also for foreign trade and export. The terrorists are strengthened by many foreign fighters, who are not actually. When I take the case of Burkina, there are many criminals there who are not Burkinab. There are also instructors who come from various countries to teach them many techniques. But it's not terrorism, in fact, it's imperialism. Their objective is to keep us in a permanent war, prevent us from developing and continue to exploit our resources. That is why they have every interest in bringing explosives teams into the mines, to deploy various types of mines. Today's terrorists use combat drones. These are professionals from certain countries who come to teach them all this. All of this is to keep us in a state of insecurity. However, we are aware of the situation, we adapt each time to their mode of action, and we will continue the fight until the entire Sahel region is recovered. And we are striving to collaborate more with all the countries that are fighting today for their economic independence, because it is a form of imperialist oppression. Those who are oppressed should unite to face this hegemony, and have achieved some progress in this field. There are many agencies to be put in place, there are many aspects to be leveled in the 3 countries, since, I believe you are aware, our economic levels vary. Militarily, there are many aspects. Balance is crucial, and therefore, it requires the implementation of many systems, many meetings. And free movement requires a certain number of factors to be combined. You should have noticed that we did a lot to have a unique security document for travel. So, it is evolving and going very well. I think it was them, French authorities, who have contributed to reducing their own influence. Because they have a paternalistic conception of our relations. When you look at everything we do, every initiative we take, it's associated with Russia. And some might say, they are influenced by Russia, Everything that happened is because of Russia. Why do they have closed eyes like that? Africa is not capable of developing anything, inventing, innovating, or taking initiatives. That's what we are fighting against. And take a look at their statements, those of the French President, Emmanuel Macron, for example. He is always saying young Africans are influenced by Russia. And Western media, all they do is lie. And speaking of AES, Alliance of Sahel States, which is a model of emerging structure, they can't spend their day without mentioning Burkina or AES. They cannot but talk about it. And every time they seek to use this information to manipulate the youth, but it no longer works. I think people are quite aware of their goals. They manage to distort history by using this rhetoric, including the history of Africa. They could pass off lies as the truth, leading to some young Africans not knowing Africa's history. What has Africa done? Some don't even know that our grandparents fought, being used as cannon fodder, and in return, killed like animals. Do people know that when France experimented with its first atomic bomb, it was black soldiers who were placed in the lethal radius to see what effect it had? It's all in the archives. Everything they used against Africa is terrible. So there is all this that must be communicated for young Africans for them to learn it, because there are still many in the dark, who continue to support the imperialists, believing what they say and do. Maybe because they're given something, I'm not sure. But Africa must learn its history, wake up. This is what we also fight for. My biggest regret is having spent a good part of my youth listening to radios like RFI, France 24. I've been living in countries where these radios were the only ones. We would use the programs, record their news to listen to, but after a while, there was a click. I began to understand that they brainwash us to accept what they want. It's their narrative they want us to learn, and since then I've become more aware of this, and I've understood that what they do is very dangerous. And today more than ever I realize that they have especially manipulated the minds of Africans. And you can play a significant role in waking young people's consciousness, helping them understand how the world works and preventing them from falling into the trap of those narratives.
Mr. President, friends, we are very glad to see you. And first of all, I would like to thank you once again for making this decision to participate in the commemorative events to honor the 80th anniversary of the victory in the Great Patriotic War. I remember our constructive and useful conversation back in 2023 when you visited our country for the first time to participate in the Russia-Africa Summit in St. Petersburg. This time, your visit to Russia to celebrate the 80th anniversary of the victory is a great symbol, and it reflects the friendly character of relations between Burkina Faso and Russia. And I would like to mention your contribution, your country's contribution to defeating German Nazism and its allies. Some 30,000 Burkinabe fought with the anti-Hitler coalition forces under the guidance, under the leadership of legendary Frenchman Charles de Gaulle. And now we are united by our joint goal to fight against terrorism and extremism, and we will continue to support the Republic and restoring constitutional and lawful order, to fight against unlawful factions that are still operating in some parts of Burkina Faso. In recent years, we have accomplished great progress in mutually beneficial cooperation in various fields. In the end of 2023, after more than 30 years of hiatus, the embassy of Russia in Ouagadougou was turned operational again. And the economic operation is also important, even if trade is modest. It's growing, which is a good trend, and we need to preserve it. And we will continue to work together on further strengthening our economic ties and diversify further our trade cooperations. And it was useful to hold economic days of Burkina Faso in Russia that were held in 2024. and it was attended by the high-level Burkinabe delegation led by the Deputy Prime Minister, and we are working now on establishing intergovernmental commission. We have already established a working group to look into that matter, and we will continue to support your country in training personnel in 2024 and in 2025. The quota of Russian state scholarship for Burkinabe nationals was more than doubled, and this year we are ready to receive 27 more students from your country at the state's expense, and in total more than 3,500 Burkinabe received higher education in Russia. Cultural and humanitarian ties also play an important part, and it is assisted by the Russian house that is operating in Ouagadougou since 2024. In particular, they are teaching Russian language there. There is a great potential in cooperation in the field of healthcare and sanitary regulations. Recently, on April 24-25, Madam Popova visited Ouagadougou and discussed the development of scientific and research infrastructure and training of personnel. We also prioritize humanitarian support for Burkina Faso. Last year, we allocated 25,000 tons of wheat free of charge, and this month we are going to send a large supply of other food products to Ouagadougou. We appreciate the support from Burkina Faso and many international platforms, including the UN and other multilateral platforms. A useful format of cooperation is the consultations between Russia and Sahel States Confederation. April this year, such a session was held in Moscow with foreign ministers. There are good prospects in many areas, and we will have a chance to discuss some of them today. Thank you for your attention. Thank you very much. Congratulations, Mr. President. I hope I pronounced my felicitation properly. For me, it was an honor to be part of these commemorative events devoted to the great victory anniversary, and I would like to thank you for inviting us. It was a great honor for us. And I need to say that during this visit, I learned a lot. I learned a lot about culture, about history, that laid the foundation of the resistance of the Russian people, of its struggle. I learned of sacrifices your people made, and due to these sacrifices, we are free now. And I would like to thank you once again for this invitation, and this meeting allows us to think about what's happening in the world today and to think about the prospects as well. The obstacles that we can see today must not stop us. These obstacles, in some way, they are even an advantage, because despite all the sanctions that were imposed on the Russian Federation by many states, Russia is still holding the leading position internationally, and we understand this. We understand how difficult it is. And I watched the parade, I watched the soldiers marching in front of us during the parade. I saw the equipment, including the tanks that from the times of World War II, and I saw the modern equipment, and we would like to see the cooperation between our countries developing rapidly, developing swiftly, and acquire new shapes and forms. We thank you for your attitude towards Burkina Faso. Today I visited Mendeleev Institute, and we understand that apart from defense and security, there is another essential field, which is science and education, and we would like to see Russia assisting us in training and educating our youth to help us to develop our own industries, our own enterprises. machinery, other types of manufacturing, because it's very important for Africa. We believe that terrorism that we can see today is a legacy of imperialism, and that's something that we fight against. If we put an end to this war, if we have a strong army, then we can develop our motherland. This is why we continue to fight. That is why we have this struggle. That's why it's important to train personnel, to educate people. In Africa, Africa needs a lot when it comes to equipment, when it comes to technology and machinery, and there are a lot of expectations in this regard. And that's why we still need to do a lot, we need to work a lot, and we would like to request an assistant, and the most important thing you can help with is this exchanges, transfers of technology, exchange of experience. We need to understand how we can use the experience and the know-how that Russian universities have, and how we can spread it to Burkina Faso, how we can open branches of the Russian universities and Burkina Faso to be more efficient in the way we educate our people, our citizens. This is the essential task that we are faced with. We would like to see Burkina Faso developing, and we would like to see students coming to us to learn various sciences. We can see great young people in the Russian Federation. Among them, there are a lot of researchers, young scientists, and we would like to learn from you.